Welcome to Crown TV. Immerse yourself with a captivating audio from our stories. We provide an alternative way to read books in audio. We upload many audiobooks as possible, from bestsellers to timeless classic. Subscribe and stay tuned for new upload.
Episode 406, New Teacher or Protector? The students of Class 6 found it hilarious that Eric was willing to back down so quickly. Alex had properly humiliated him by making him sit in his own glue trap, and now Heidi was making him change his plans. They laughed at Eric raucously. Eric took off his glue-marked trousers and sat down in his boxer shorts. He felt and looked ridiculous. Lance wasn't happy. He had agreed to cancel any other attacks on the new teacher to save Eric from embarrassment. And because he, like many of the other boys in the class, was not willing to contradict Heidi. But the truth was that he wasn't at all sure that it was the best course of action. The new head teacher of Class 6, Mr. Ambrose, had certainly had a big impact on the students. After appearing in the classroom for only 5 minutes, he had already affected their plans. The other pranks they had planned to use on him were called off. For the first time in a long time, the class did not feel completely united. They each had their own ideas about how to handle the situation and were suspicious of one another. Heidi, in particular, seemed to have her own plan, having run off after Mr. Ambrose in a hurry. If Class 6 was divided, their head teacher would be able to deal with them all much more easily. It would be more difficult for them to unite and cause the sort of disorder that they had before. Heidi was so popular in the class that it would take everyone a long time to realize that she was the one who had betrayed them. Standing in the office of Oak Ridge High School, Leonard felt very proud of himself. The new teacher only lasted for 5 minutes in Class 6. I'm afraid he's going to have a lot of trouble with him, he gloated. Well, Class 6 are apparently planning to strike back at him. Then he definitely won't be able to continue working at the school. Didn't he say that if there are any accidents in Class 6 today, he'll leave immediately? Billy said smugly. Several of the teachers were also waiting to see how Alex handled Class 6. Most of them had found him to be very arrogant and wouldn't mind watching him fail. He was only in Class 6 for 5 minutes when he came out again. How can he show his face in front of the rest of us? Asked one teacher. I think he's just a kid who's only just graduated. Maybe he doesn't have enough experience for Class 6, suggested another. Those students in Class 6 are savages. It's not right to send in a new graduate. It's like sending a lamb to the slaughter, said another. If you ask me, I know he's failed and can't show his face in front of the rest of us. I think he's run away already, said the first man. Alex found the atmosphere outside the classroom at Oak Ridge High School very uncomfortable. It seemed that everyone was watching him and whispering behind his back. But he dismissed the attitudes of the other teachers, thinking, I'm just here to protect Heidi. Nothing else matters. Heidi knew him, but earlier she had sat at the back of the class and stared at him uncomprehendingly. She had made no effort to speak to him, and he found it a little strange. His thoughts were interrupted by a girl's voice calling out, Alex, please wait for me. He turned round to see a girl rushing up to him breathlessly. Alex asked, Heidi, is that you? She replied, Yes, but I didn't expect to see you again, Alex. I didn't know you were a teacher. Heidi really was a beautiful girl. Although she was a high school student, her figure was incredible, even compared to most young women. She had the face of a porcelain doll and a beautiful smile. The boys all adored her. But Alex wasn't paying attention to her looks. He smiled politely and said, "I wasn't, but things have changed unexpectedly." When he saw her expression, he realized that she didn't even know that someone was protecting her. "You stood up twice for me the other day. I'll always be grateful to you," Heidi said with a flirtatious smile. Worryingly, Alex saw the same glint of affection in Heidi's eyes that he saw in Debbie's when she gazed adoringly at him. He deliberately changed the subject by asking, "What about your parents? Do you get to visit them often?" "My father is Dr. Benedict Reels," Heidi frowned. "I haven't seen him for a month, and I can't get through to him on the phone. I don't know if he's cross with me about something, or maybe he's working too much." Alex knew that Benedict Reels had been kidnapped, but clearly his daughter didn't know anything about it. He felt very sorry for her. He changed the subject again. "You can't call me Alex anymore. I'm your teacher now. What would the other students think?" he told her. "I see, Mr. Ambrose. But can I call you Alex in private? It'll feel too formal to call you Mr. Ambrose when we know each other so well." Heidi took on a flirtatious tone again. "No. I'm your teacher now." Alex didn't even smile. He thought, "I have to be careful not to give this child the wrong impression. She mustn't read anything into our relationship." "Grumpy," Heidi replied as she pouted her lips. But in a blink of an eye, she burst into laughter. "Well, are you single or married?" "You shouldn't be asking me things like that. If you must know, I'm in a relationship." Alex took the opportunity to make sure that Heidi knew he wasn't available. "With that beautiful girl you were with the other day?" Heidi asked. She regarded Alex as a friend, so felt confident to ask him personal questions. "You should mind your own business," Alex reprimanded her sternly. Then he waved his hand at her and turned to leave. If it wasn't for his responsibility to protect her, he would have avoided her completely. Her behavior was really not appropriate. "Sorry, Mr. Ambrose," Heidi said. "Why are you so cross?" Alex hesitated for a moment, then explained firmly, "I have to tell you that you must be with me all the time from now on. We will eat together, live together, and travel together to school. Over the next 3 months, you mustn't leave my sight at any time. Do you understand?" "What are you talking about? Why?" Heidi was confused. She couldn't understand why he would say something like that. Alex thought for a moment and decided that it was better to explain everything to her. He said, "Your father asked me to take care of you." "Really? I don't believe you. My father has never cared about his family. He's only ever cared about his work," Heidi replied without hesitation. Episode 407, Teenage Feelings. "Why would I lie to you?" Alex said coldly. "The truth is that your father has been kidnapped and you're also in danger. I'm responsible for protecting you. For the next 3 months, you have to do everything I tell you, or I can't guarantee that I can keep you safe." "What? What's happened to my dad?" Heidi cried out. She started sobbing. He had been told to keep what had happened to Heidi's father a secret, but after some careful consideration, he decided to tell her everything. He didn't want her to jump to any wrong conclusions. He felt that he owed Heidi something and was therefore willing to protect her. However, he wasn't going to get involved in any of her adolescent issues or dramas. As long as she cooperated with him, everything would be fine. Alex's train of thought was interrupted by his phone ringing. He answered it, and the voice on the other end said, "Mr. Ambrose, what you said just now is breaking the terms of our agreement. You can't tell Heidi the truth." Although the words were spoken very politely, they annoyed Alex very much. "Fine. What do you want me to do? You can rescind our agreement immediately, and I'll leave Oak Ridge High School right now," Alex said impatiently. "No, Mr. Ambrose, I'm sorry. You misunderstand me. Please continue." As Alex ended the call, Heidi watched him with wide eyes. "What's going on?" Heidi asked. She wondered, "What's happened to Mr. Ambrose? Is he finally admitting that he's attracted to me? What are you doing? I'm not—" Heidi wanted to reject him, but her heart wasn't in it. Instead, she felt really happy. Heidi really was a very attractive young lady. However, Alex didn't have any romantic thoughts toward her at all. At that moment, all he felt was a trace of anger. The people he was working for had obviously planted a hidden recording device on Heidi and were monitoring everything they said. He was convinced that he was right. How else could they have known so quickly what he had said to Heidi? It was obvious that they had heard the conversation between them. After ending the call, he checked Heidi's body for the monitoring device. As he searched her, he thought about how wrong they were not to want to tell Heidi the truth. Lying to her was certain to cause him problems. How could he persuade her to follow his orders if she didn't know what was going on? And how could he explain what he was doing to everyone else? "Just do your duty," he told himself. "Don't worry about anything else." Heidi was standing in front of Alex with a glow on her cheeks and adoration in her eyes. She couldn't believe how handsome he was. Alex continued to search her dispassionately. After a few seconds, he saw something, and he quickly reached toward her chest, grabbed a pendant from around her neck, and slammed it onto the ground. The monitoring device instantly stopped working. When he pulled the pendant off her, Heidi's first instinct was to try to dodge out of his way, but he acted too quickly for her to avoid him. Shocked, her heart thumped and she refused to look at him. "Tell me how my father got kidnapped. Who kidnapped him?" Heidi demanded, still avoiding any eye contact with him. She knew that her father was at the forefront of cutting-edge biotechnology research, but she didn't know if that was related to how distantly he seemed to be behaving lately. She was desperate to know what had happened. Alex shook his head. He wasn't completely clear about the answers himself, but he was also concerned about how much he should tell her. All he knew was that he was there to protect Heidi. He didn't feel that he needed to know anymore. Heidi looked down at the pendant. It was still very new, and she remembered that her aunt had given it to her at her father's laboratory. She had no idea that everything she did was being watched. "Go back to your class," Alex ordered her sternly. "Okay," Heidi agreed after taking a long breath. She would be happy to get back to class and stop thinking about everything that was happening. Outside the door of Class 6, Billy was waiting for their next act of rebellion. Next to teach the class was home economics teacher Lynn Bowen. When she arrived at the classroom door, she found several teachers waiting for her, including Billy, the teaching director. Lynn had a very low opinion of Billy. She had once spent a night with him and hoped for more, but he rejected her. She quickly learned that he was a womanizer. Afterward, Billy had made the excuse to her that he was drunk and regretted what had happened, but Lynn couldn't forget that night. She nodded to him and the other teachers out of politeness as she walked past them. Billy stopped her and said smugly, "Miss Bowen, I don't think you should go into your classroom. The students are in an uproar. They're planning to hold some kind of strike to protest their dissatisfaction with Alex. Yes, Will heard about it, so we came here to help deal with it, one of the other teachers agreed. The teachers all pretended to be concerned, but Lynn was disgusted. She knew that Billy and the others were all just there to entertain themselves. She smiled and pushed her way through to the classroom, determined to face whatever was waiting for her inside. Hey, wait! It'll definitely kick off soon. What'll happen to Alex then? Leonard said. He didn't like Alex and was enjoying the drama. Billy despised Alex. He said, I don't understand how he got this job. He must know someone on the school board. Not only is he the head teacher of Class 6, but he's also the new PE teacher. He's a weakling. How can he be qualified to teach PE? He still based his impression of Alex on when he knew him as a poor student back in New York. He had no idea that Alex's pitiful situation had been forced on him by his family as part of his poverty training. Billy just assumed that he was better than Alex in every way. Episode 408, Calm Before the Storm. They all stood in the corridor outside the classroom, waiting for something with Class 6 to go wrong. Lynn was becoming impatient. She had been waiting for a while, but nothing seemed to be happening. Billy crossed his arms. He was enjoying himself and wasn't in any hurry. Finally, Lynn walked into the room to find the students sitting with their feet up on the desks, snoring, playing with their cell phones, and chatting with their friends. Lynn called for their attention, but they ignored her completely. All she could do was open her book and calmly begin the lesson. She actually felt a little relieved. The discipline in the classroom hadn't improved at all, but at least there was no sign of a strike. She thought, Billy and Leonard, it looks like your fantasy strike isn't going to happen. Now, perhaps the new teacher, Mr. Ambrose, will be safe. From the corridor, Billy was surprised to hear Lynn giving her lesson in the classroom. That was not what was supposed to happen. Why hadn't the strike started? Wait a bit longer, he told himself. 1 minute passed, and then 2 minutes. 3 minutes passed, and then 5 minutes. Still nothing happened. His vision of the students swarming out, shouting their protestations hadn't come true. 10 minutes later, he heard that Lynn had stopped talking. Now it's going to begin, Billy thought. He listened on excitedly. But nothing happened. Miss Bowen is probably trying to pacify the students. That's never going to work, he commented. After waiting for 15 minutes, everything still seemed normal. He couldn't believe it. What are you doing waiting by the door? Alex's voice suddenly came from behind him. Mr. Ambrose, why don't you wait here with us? Any minute now the show should begin, Leonard said snidely. Then he suddenly felt something hit the back of his head. Ouch! Who hit me? He said as he turned around and found Billy staring at him. Mr. Wilde, why did you hit me? Leonard asked in bewilderment. Of course I didn't hit you, Billy replied quickly. Leonard touched his head and found a small lump. It was very painful to touch. Billy was the only person standing behind him, but he couldn't think of any reason for Billy to hit him. Was it a ghost? It was retribution, Alex said quietly. Leonard rubbed his head and said, Don't get too comfortable. This isn't over. Billy backed Leonard up. Alex, don't think that your position is safe here at Oak Ridge High School. I'll find a way to reveal your true colors to everyone. Alex knew what Billy thought of him, but he wasn't afraid of him. "Well, I look forward to seeing what you decide to do," he said. He knew that he could kill Billy with no trouble at all, but restrained his anger. Biting his tongue, he turned to leave. There were several teachers in the corridor, but when they realized that nothing exciting was going to happen, they started to wander away. Only Billy and Leonard waited longer, hoping that the strike would still kick off. Half an hour later, there was still nothing. Standing outside the classroom, their legs started to feel tired. When the bell rang indicating the end of the class, Lynn walked out smiling, and the students of Class 6 followed her out. Billy and Leonard finally had to accept that they were wrong. Nothing was going to happen. "Miss Bowen, wait a minute," Leonard said as he caught up with her. "Was there anything unusual about Class 6 today?" he asked. "No. What were you hoping would be unusual?" Lynn asked pointedly. "Were you hoping there would be something wrong with Class 6 today? Is that an appropriate wish for a teacher and educator of young people?" Lynn turned away in disgust and walked away from Leonard and Billy. "Damn it," Leonard cursed. Billy hissed. "Just wait. Once Alex has been driven away from the school, we'll make sure we get rid of her too." At noon, Leonard and Billy were still stewing over what had happened. In the office later that afternoon, they were still discussing it. "Why was Class 6 so calm today when they've been so disruptive lately?" Leonard asked. "Yes, it's really strange," agreed Billy. "You wait. The afternoon's about to start. Now something's bound to happen," said Leonard with certainty. "Yes, and an inexperienced novice like Alex will have no chance of controlling them," agreed Billy with a satisfied smile. The group of teachers who wished Alex ill felt very confident. Again, they waited outside the classroom, but everything inside remained calm. At the end of the afternoon classes, Billy went into Class 6 and waited for the students to leave the classroom. It was a crucial moment, because if the day passed and there was still no strike in Class 6, it wouldn't be Alex who made a fool of himself, but himself in front of the rest of the teachers. Finally, Eric and a classmate walked out together. Frustrated, Billy rushed up to Eric and said angrily, "Eric, what's the matter with you? Why didn't you strike like you said you were going to?" "Billy, who the hell do you think you are? Get out of my way or I'll thump you," Eric replied. Billy's face froze. He had spoken in a whisper, but Eric's voice was so loud that everyone around them heard him. The students started chatting excitedly. One said, "I can't believe that Eric just dared to talk back to Mr. Wilde. Billy's really mean." Billy felt despondent. The day had been a total disaster. However, at that moment, he heard a voice coming from the classroom. "Everyone from Class 6, please go to the running track immediately. We're about to begin." It was Alex addressing the students of Class 6. Billy's face suddenly changed as he realized what was about to happen. There had been no incidents at all in Class 6 that day, which meant that he and the other teachers had lost their bet with Alex. As punishment, all 12 of them who were involved in the bet were going to have to run 50 laps of the racetrack. Each lap was 400 kilometers, so 50 laps were 20 kilometers. It would take them a good couple of hours. Billy couldn't believe that Alex was blatantly encouraging the students to watch them. "Please, let's forget all about the bet," he begged Alex. He realized that he had met his match in Alex Ambrose. "If you lose, you have to accept your punishment." Alex replied coldly, then walked away. He was starting to find life in high school quite interesting. Eric laughed and told everyone, "Guess what? Mr. Wilde and the other teachers made a bet with Mr. Ambrose that something would happen in Class 6 today. They've all lost and have to run 50 laps of the racetrack." Episode 409, Time for Punishment. "Let's go! Everyone from Class 6 is going to the running track to watch the teachers," Eric roared. "Let's laugh at them all trying to run," he continued and laughed loudly. "Eric, you're going too far," Billy yelled. Eric was deliberately provoking him in public. "Why don't you run back to your uncle, Billy? Do you think I don't know what you're up to? You deliberately passed on your uncle's information about Mr. Ambrose to us. You're hoping that we'll do what you're too feeble to do yourself and drive him out of the school by acting out. Do you really think I'd let myself be used by you?" Eric mercilessly revealed Billy's deviant plotting to everyone. Billy's face drained of color. His secret had been exposed. He ran out of the room before Eric could say anything else. On the running track, more than a dozen teachers had gathered. They looked miserable. The principal approached Alex and said, "Mr. Ambrose, do you really think this is appropriate? After all, we're colleagues. So should we really be having bets with one another?" The principal was neutral in his regard for the teachers, and he had no strong feelings about Alex. Alex shook his head and said, "No, we shouldn't. A teacher should be a benchmark for moral character. If you're not, you'll lose all respect from the students." There was one really desperate teacher. "Hey, Mr. Ambrose, how can you justify making us run and then spout that nonsense?" he shouted. "What nonsense? The bet wasn't my idea, but you all insisted. Now you have to face the consequences. To back out now would set a poor example and demonstrate how weak you are to the students," Alex replied. He felt like he was dealing with a group of infants. Billy took a deep breath. His heart was thumping, but what could he do? He was well aware that if a teacher lost their reputation in front of the students, they would be finished. He and Leonard looked at each other with eyes full of resentment and anguish. Billy knew that although everyone would laugh at him if he ran, it was still better to run than to back out. He really didn't have much choice. He walked to the front of the group of teachers. The teachers were all pointing and laughing at them. "We can't wait to see you run, Mr. Wilde. We want to see your stomach shaking while you're running," shouted one boy. "Oh, I think you're making him angry," said another. "This is going to be so much fun. We never get to see the teachers trying to do sports," said another. "Isn't that Mr. Garvey? Hey, Mr. Garvey, don't let Mr. Winters beat you," yelled another. "Ha ha ha ha!" They all laughed happily. The students from Class 6 couldn't stop laughing at the teachers. Every time they thought they had made the perfect joke about one, they came up with an even better one-liner about another. Alex was watching the teachers and trying not to laugh himself. "The new teacher looks quite athletic," Eric commented. "That doesn't mean we'll be any nicer to him," replied his friend. More and more students came to the track to watch the teachers running. After all, it was unprecedented for so many teachers to be humiliated together. But none of the teachers usually did much exercise, and after running only 400 meters, they were out of breath and sweating. The news spread quickly around the campus and most of the students came to watch. Even some teachers sacrificed going home early and rushed to the running track. "Go and ask the students in the dormitory if they want to come and watch," someone yelled excitedly. A lot of the students started cheering, and a few were even whistling at the teachers. Most of the students in Class 6 were joining in. They were the most excited of everyone to watch the race. By the time the teachers had run the first lap, most of the students had gathered to watch the dozen teachers performing on the track. The teachers were ashamed and angry, but they had no choice but to keep running. After running for a few laps, their hatred of Alex had increased tenfold. "It's about time we got our own back," shouted one student. "You guys make us run every day. It's time for us to see you getting exhausted in our place." The whole school was overjoyed to watch the teachers' humiliation. Every word that was shouted at teachers was adding insult to injury. Each of them privately wished a hole would open up in the ground and bury them. When they looked over at Alex, their eyes were filled with hatred and their lungs almost burst with anger. On the edge of the running track, Alex sat on the chair with his feet up and enjoyed a cup of tea. And the principal stood beside Alex. He looked as if he was talking with him about something. "Okay, I'll follow your advice, but I still want you to take charge of Class 6. If time permits, of course." The principal's tone was very humble. Alex had just told the principal all about the real situation with Heidi and her father, and the principal was very sorry to hear about what her family was going through. Alex reassured him. "You don't have to worry. Class 6 is just a group of typical adolescents. If they're properly guided, they'll be fine. They're all very smart kids." The principal pushed up his glasses and admitted that he appreciated Alex's work with Class 6. He said, "I recognize that you're an excellent teacher. I've worked in education for many years, and I recognize a good teacher when I meet one. I believe that you will manage Class 6 perfectly." Then he confessed sincerely, "Initially, I only agreed to the arrangement made by my superiors because I had no choice. I admit that I had no confidence in your teaching ability, but I'm happy to say that I've been proved wrong. I am very hopeful for the future of Class 6, and I apologize for my lack of judgment." The fact that Alex had been able to help with Class 6 was of huge value to the principal, and he was extremely grateful to Alex. Alex knew that to successfully manage people, you first needed to control their hearts. Making the teachers run really won Class 6 over, which would help him manage them in the future. He knew that the teachers themselves were furious with him, but that didn't bother him at all. Perhaps they wouldn't be so quick to try to attack him in the future. A particularly tall student walked over to Eric and said, "Eric, I really like that teacher. What a character." The student looked strong and athletic and clearly took regular exercise. "Maybe it's all a trick. He's trying to win us over," Eric said suspiciously. "I don't care what his motives are. He looks like he's interested in sports, so I'm going to see how fit he really is in PE class tomorrow. Let's go for a walk." Just as they stood up to walk away, one of the exhausted teachers running on the track collapsed to the ground. Episode 410, Challenge Accepted. "If they don't manage the whole run, I'll make them suffer." The tall student laughed as he looked at the exhausted teachers on the running track. By that time, several of the teachers had fainted. Very few of them were athletic or even took regular walks. Most of the teachers had had enough after only a few laps. However, the principal was acting as the referee, and it was his job to strictly record the number of laps each teacher ran. No one blamed or hated the principal, because they all blamed Alex instead. Alex saw the hate in their eyes, but just laughed. He didn't care what they thought of him. Billy was the next person to collapse on the track. He fainted and fell to the ground unconscious. As he came to, he was utterly humiliated. He thought, "My uncle is a very powerful person, and I was also a very important figure at Preston University. Now because of Alex, I've been made into a joke. I'm so insulted." Billy and the other teachers just wanted to crawl away. But before they did that, of course, they wanted to take their anger out on Alex. Their reputations and dignity had been completely destroyed. By the end of the day, all of them were suffering from exhaustion, and all asked the principal for a leave the following day. And the next day, Class 6 arrived at the gym for Alex's first PE class. Usually PE was their favorite class because the old teacher hadn't cared to monitor their behavior, so the students had been free to do whatever they wanted. They assumed that it'd be the same with Alex. They were already planning how they would spend their time as they walked to class. "Come and have a cigarette with me in the bathroom," said one boy. "Let's play cards," said another. The tall athletic student walked over to the others. "Dylan, what are you going to do in this PE class?" Lance asked him. Eric overheard him and remembered that Dylan had said the previous day that he wanted to challenge the new teacher to a sports contest. "Dylan, are you going to play cards with us today?" Eric asked. "No, can't today. I've got other things to do." His eyes seemed to be searching the stadium. Dylan was a very popular student from Class 6. His scholarly achievements were poor, but his family was rich and powerful, and he was a natural athlete. Tall and well-muscled, at only 17, he could already compete with adults in most sports. In the past, Dylan was one of the few students to take PE class seriously. He usually took the opportunity to practice jumping, long-distance running, and playing basketball. He was generally accepted as the school's most accomplished athlete. And he was not only highly regarded within Oak Ridge High School, but also more widely in Baltimore City. The previous year, he had won first place in the city's long-distance running competition. Many sports teams had invited Dylan to play with them, hoping that he would join them after he graduated. "What's the matter?" Lance asked him curiously, when he noticed that Dylan was clearly searching for someone. "I want to see what that new teacher's made of. I'm going to challenge him to beat me at any sport that he chooses." "Great! That's going to be great fun to watch. There's no way he'll beat you," Lance replied as a group of students gathered around to cheer for Dylan. They all knew what an excellent athlete Dylan was, and were 100% sure that he would excel against the new teacher. At that moment, Alex walked over leisurely. "Everyone, stand up," he ordered the students. His voice was not loud, but it was authoritative. The students of Class 6 all stood in a row. Most of them stood with their heads drooping, feeling lethargic and resentful. "Listen up, everyone. Now make me happy and run 5 laps of the track," Alex said loudly. "Hello, Mr. Ambrose," Dylan said as he stepped arrogantly onto the track. His physique was impressive, and he made Alex look small in comparison. "What do you want?" Alex asked him. "If you're really a PE teacher, you must be good at sports. I want to challenge you," Dylan said with a smirk. "What are you talking about?" Alex asked calmly. "Well, I'm the best sportsman in the school, and I challenge you on behalf of my classmates. Do you dare to accept my challenge?" Dylan said loudly. All the Class 6 students became very excited. Alex's face remained relaxed. "Look at that. Mr. Ambrose is too scared," said one student. "Anyone who dares to accept a sports challenge from Dylan is crazy. No one can beat him," declared another. But then Alex said, "Sure." The class exploded into gasps and cheers. "Dylan threw out his hook, and the new teacher took the bait," laughed another. "Dylan has competed against most of the top sports players in Baltimore and has never failed. I think the new head teacher is crazy to accept," said another. People were shaking their heads and watching Alex carefully. Of course, Dylan was also very happy because he thought he had won already. The whole class was on his side. "Teacher, you haven't even asked me what the challenge is," he said. "It doesn't matter," Alex shrugged. "Good. You can't back out now." "The one who loses," Dylan started to say. Then he looked thoughtfully at the school gate. "If you lose, you have to go back to wherever you came from. How about that?" "What if you lose?" Alex asked. "If I lose? There's no chance of that. Everyone will tell you that I always win. I've never tasted failure," Dylan said conceitedly. He continued, "Even if you were a professional sportsman, you should be careful when facing me. Everyone knows that I'm a sporting star, whereas you're just some school PE teacher. How can you possibly expect to win against me?" Dylan looked very smug. "Well, you better get ready for your first taste of failure," Alex replied with a glint in his eyes. Then he remembered that Dylan was really only a kid, and he needed to keep it friendly. So he added, "I mean, if I beat you, of course." "If you beat me? Okay, whatever you want." Dylan didn't care. He knew he would win. "Good," Alex nodded. At that moment, Billy and Leonard approached them. "Mr. Ambrose, are you accepting Dylan's challenge?" Billy asked happily. He knew what an accomplished athlete Dylan was. Alex was sure to be humiliated. "Go away," Alex told him rudely. He couldn't be bothered to deal with his pettiness. "How dare you?" Billy's face turned the color of beetroot. He was livid as he realized that Alex saw him as a joke. He clearly didn't have a trace of respect for him. "Well, you're in for a shock. You clearly don't know how good Dylan is," he said smugly. This would be Alex's humiliation, and he had no intention of missing the opportunity to make the most of it. "In the long jump, the world record is 8.94 meters, and Dylan can jump 8.92 meters, he added. "The world 800 meters record is 1:40.89, and Dylan can run it at 1:41. Not only has he competed in national competitions, but he also holds the silver medal level from the international championships."
Thank you for listening to Crown TV. Please don't forget to subscribe, share and turn on the notification button.